With Wayne Rooney getting closer and closer to the sack at Plymouth, it made me think to myself, there are some absolutely amazing players out there who are also amazing managers. You've got the likes of Zidane, Cruyff, Guardiola, Ancelotti, Deschamps, and those were just the first five that came to my head. Then you've got the amazing managers who were awful players, like Jose Mourinho, Julian Nagelsmann, you've got Rafael Benitez, you've got Thomas Tuchel, and even Arsene Wenger, who was one of the best Premier League managers of all time. He was an awful player. But in this video, we're going to be talking about 4 players who were probably at some point the best in the world in their prime, who are now just awful managers. But before we do jump into the video, I want to ask you guys a question. Who do you think is the best manager in the world right now? The best manager of all time is, without a doubt, Sir Alex Ferguson, because what he did after 26 years, which is over a quarter of your life at Manchester United, was just unreal. But right now, at this current moment in time, despite everything Manchester City are going through, I'd have to say Pep Guardiola. But that's just my opinion. Like I said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Now, the 4 managers we're going to be talking about in this video aren't realistically ranked in any order. It's just the order that they came into my head. But up first, we have got Wayne Rooney. Now, I'm going to try my hardest to be unbiased when talking about Rooney, but the hatred I have for this man is unreal because of what he did to my club. Now, Rooney, of course, finished his playing career at Derby, and he did actually start his managerial career at Derby. And to be honest, he was a little bit unlucky because everything that Derby was going through at that time. He took over as caretaker manager during the 2020-21 season, and he actually kept him up on the final game of the season after taking over when they were bottom. So, you got to give him credit, he kept him up in that season. Now, in Rooney's first full season, it was a nightmare for Derby. They spent the whole season in administration. They had to let literally 30 players go because they couldn't afford the wages, and they even got a 21-point deduction to start the season with. They signed 15 players, majority of them was free transfer, and they had 1 loan player because they just couldn't afford to buy anyone, they had no money. And the majority of the season, they did actually have to just basically play the kids. However, despite a really good effort, Derby was actually only relegated by 7 points. So, although they did get relegated, they did a good job. Starting, like I said, with 21 points behind everyone else and only getting relegated by 7 points. It's not as bad as it could have been. Now, at the end of that season, he did leave Derby and he actually joined another one of his old clubs in MLS, DC United. Now, he did actually take over halfway through the MLS season, but he did only manage 9 points out of 42, and they finished bottom of the Eastern Conference League. Now, the following season, he only managed 40 points as manager and finished 23rd in the league overall, and they failed to qualify for their American qualifier playoff thing for the second season in a row, and again, he was left at the end of the season. Now, this is where I might kind of lose my cool a little bit, because literally 3 days after he left DC United, he took over at my club, Birmingham City. And you know what? I'm not even exaggerating when I say he absolutely ruined us. When he took over, we were 6th in the table, and let's be honest with ourselves, we're never ever going to get promoted, but we were 6th in the table. We was also on a great bit of form, back-to-back wins. We just beat our rivals Baggies at home. But then Rooney comes in and won just 2 games in 15, and he left when we were in 20th place. And of course, we got relegated that season. The whole appointment was just a massive mistake, and it just really backfired. But at least we're in kind of good hands now. They've learnt a lesson, I think. Now, at this point, I thought Rooney's career was over as a manager, but Plymouth were stupid enough to touch him. And now it looks like they're going to regret that decision as well. They've been awful this season, and they currently sit 1 place from the bottom with some really difficult fixtures coming up against Middlesbrough and Coventry. And it's actually quite funny because if he gets sacked after either of those games, it could either be Michael Carrick or Frank Lampard, his 2 teammates that he used to play with, that actually get him the sack. I'm just going to put his record on the screen, and as you can see, it's awful everywhere he's been, and he only has a 25.9% win rate as of recording this video. If he does get sacked by Plymouth, I really hope nobody is stupid enough to hire him again, because he's just an awful manager, and he's just not meant to be a manager. It's going to sound horrible, but he's just not good enough. Next up, we have Frank Lampard, and out of the 4 managers in this video, to be fair, he's probably had the best career so far as a manager. He got his first job at Derby, just like Rooney did, and to be fair, Lampard was actually pretty good there. In his first season, they managed to knock out Manchester United in the EFL Cup on penalties, and they even finished 6th in the Championship table. Now, in the playoffs, they did beat Leeds in the semi-final, but they did lose 2-1 to Aston Villa in the final. And yeah, but you know, it wasn't a bad season for Lampard and Derby in his first one. However, at the end of that season, just one season after he spent at Derby, the Chelsea job did become available, and let's be honest, Lampard was never going to turn that job down. Now, in his first season at Chelsea, he actually did pretty well despite the pressure that was on him, of course. He's one of Chelsea's best ever players, and they did actually finish 4th in the Premier League. They did also reach the FA Cup final, but they did lose to Arsenal. But, you know, in his first season, I'd say he did pretty well. Now, in the second season for Lampard, Chelsea decided to splash the cash, and they brought Ziyech, they brought Werner, they brought Chilwell, they brought Havertz, and of course they brought Edouard Mendy, who were all expected to be very, very good players for Chelsea. And you know what? They actually started off the season pretty well. In the first week of December, they were top of the Premier League, and they were top of their Champions League group. However, the next 8 games for Chelsea was an absolute nightmare, and only winning 2 out of them 8 games, Chelsea dropped to 9th and Lampard was sacked as manager. He also fell out with the board over player signings, and some players he even refused to talk to, so, you know, that didn't really help either, I guess. Just over 1 year later, he actually took over charge of Everton after they were sacked Rafa Benitez at 16th place, and of course Lampard kept him up with 1 game to go. However, again, the following season was a nightmare for Lampard. He won just 1 game in 11, and yeah, he was sacked. Of course he was. You know, that's terrible, terrible form. Lampard then returned to Chelsea later on that season with 9 games left as interim, but he only won 1 in 11 games in all competitions with just a 9% win rate, as Chelsea finished in the bottom half of the table for the first time since 1996. Now again, after his awful spout at Everton and Chelsea, I thought it was it for Lampard, but he's recently got the job at Coventry, where he's actually done okay, winning twice, drawing once and losing once in his first 4 games. Now it will be interesting to see how he does at Coventry, but if he flops again and gets the sack, then I really can't see him doing anything as a manager. Next, we have another Premier League legend midfielder with Steven Gerrard, and technically, by records and achievements, Gerrard's the best manager out of these 4 because he's the only one that's won a trophy. Now, Gerrard, of course, spent 3 seasons at Rangers where he started his career, but it was his final season which really stood out for him. That season was a record-breaking season for Rangers. You know, they finished top of the Europa League group, they did the double over Celtic, and they even went the whole Scottish season unbeaten and, of course, won the league. And you know what? They didn't just win the league. Of course, like I said, they went unbeaten. They absolutely smashed the league, only conceding 13 goals in 38 games. And of course, this was Gerrard's first and only trophy as a manager. Now, during his time at Rangers, he did actually turn down the Newcastle job because he was comfortable at Rangers. And many tipped him to actually manage Liverpool one day, and maybe even manage Liverpool when Jurgen Klopp finally left Liverpool. However, at the end of his final season, he did leave Rangers to go to Aston Villa. Now, Gerrard joined Villa on the 11th of November after Dean Smith was sacked, and after a mixed bag of results, they finished 14th in the Premier League that season, which was 3 places lower than the season before. However, again, his first full season was a nightmare, and after winning just 2 of his first 12 games, he was sacked on the 20th of October. Now, it would be interesting to see where Gerrard went next after getting sacked by Villa, but he decided to throw his career down the drain and move to Saudi Arabia to manage El Ettifaqui. He's now in his 2nd season after finishing 6th in his first season, and is currently 11th this season, and there are actually some rumours that he could be sacked. Gerrard's managerial career has just gone massively downhill since leaving Rangers, and I can't really see him getting a big job now that he's gone to Saudi Arabia, and I definitely can't see him ever managing Liverpool now. Now, the last player that we're going to speak about in this video is technically, I'd say for sure, the best player out of all these 4, and he is arguably the best player of all time, and that is Diego Maradona. Now, obviously, Diego Maradona is no longer with us, so first of all, rest in peace. And obviously, he can't get another job. But even when he was managing and he was alive, he wasn't that good as a manager anyway. He got his first job in Argentina in 1994, but after winning just 1 game in 12, he was sacked. He then managed another team in Argentina, but this time he only lasted 11 games, only winning twice, and was sacked again. Now, 13 years later, he did actually get the Argentina job, and you know what? He actually did pretty well. But after getting pumped 4-0 against Germany in the quarterfinals of the 2010 World Cup, he was sacked. He then took 2 jobs in the UAE, and then he took 2 jobs in Mexico. But to be honest, these aren't even really worth talking about. You know, it's really sad because he was such a great player and he won so much. But in terms of his managerial career, he was awful. But you know what? At least he gave us that one magical clip of him using that mysterious white powder on the bench during the game. So there are 4 players who are or were absolutely awful managers. Now, at the start of the video, I said to you guys, I want you to tell me who you think the best manager in the world is. I also want you guys to tell me now, who do you think the worst manager out of these 4 in this video are? Personally, I'd say Maradona, but because I hate Rooney so much, he can also have it. But yeah, guys, that is the end of today's video. If you did enjoy it, please do smash that like button, comment and subscribe. And yeah, the only thing that's left to say is I really do appreciate you guys coming back every week or, you know, every few days when I make these videos and watching them. It really does mean a lot to me, and it genuinely really does. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out your day. Stick around and I promise you won't regret it.